What is up, everybody? I'm Clutch Steez here. Today we're going to be reacting to Joan of Arc, Angels and Demons, Extra History number 2. Also, I got a nice guest for you. Oh, Peanut! Come on, Peanut, jump up. Over here. Come on, Peanut. Peanut butter. There we go. Who's a nice peanut butter? Who's a nice peanut? You are. Anyways, this is my sister's dog, Peanut. He's gonna be staying with us for a while until I'll just call it stuff. I'll just till stuff gets done. Yeah, he'll be staying here till stuff gets done. Isn't that right, Peanut? And he'll be reacting with me for the rest of the series. So let's begin.
February 22nd, 1431, Rouen Castle. A young woman stands amid inquisitors and theologians. She is an illiterate peasant, yet 3 notaries stand ready to scribble her every word. This is a trial where she is both defendant and the only witness, and they are determined to rule her a heretic. They ask her about the first time she heard the voices. It was when she was 13, she said, in her father's garden. I heard the voices on the right-hand side, toward the church, and rarely do I hear it without a brightness. The voice was sent by God, and I knew it was the voice of an angel. Was it an angel, they ask, or a demon?
This is gonna get good, Peanut.
To the villagers of Domlery, there was little hint that Joan would go on to do great things. She came from a farming family, humble, but with a leadership role in the village, and spent her youth spinning cloth and helping in the fields. Most expected her to live, marry, and die in Domremy, just like so many generations of girls had done before her. Though there were a few odd things about her. First off, she was a particularly devout child, one so eager to attend mass and take local pilgrimages that other children teased her for it. And on occasion, she spent excessive time at confession. Her little town of Domremy was a bit of its own world, with its own identity. In fact, Joan didn't even consider herself as living in France. The area where she lived was officially neutral in the ongoing civil war, but most people leaned Armagnac and considered the Dauphin the legitimate king, which was unfortunate, since it was also surrounded by Burgundian territory and subject to raids. Growing up, Joan saw Burgundian troops sack her village. What no one knew, though, even her parents, was that Joan heard voices. They came to her in light, using the language of angels. First, the Archangel Michael, then Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret. Initially, they just gave her religious and moral instructions. But when she was 16, they gave her a mission. For months, English and French troops had been locked in a stalemate at the city of Orléans. The voices wanted her to save the city. The voice told me that I should raise the siege laid to the city of Orléans, recalled Joan. And me? I answered it that I was a poor girl who knew not how to ride nor lead a war. Wait, what is that sound? Oh, look everyone, it's our friend the Context Fairy. Have you come to sprinkle asterisks into our episode? Okay, what have you got for us? Oh boy, we're gonna have to do most of this in lies. Sorry, Rob, but here's the gist. Joan of Arc is one of the best documented people of medieval Europe. I know it sounds amazing, but this illiterate peasant left a paper trail longer than many kings. And that's largely because of 2 spectacular trials. The Condemnation Trial that opened this episode, and the later Nullification Trial that overturned her conviction for heresy. But it's hard to untangle whether the story we get from these records is completely true. For the Condemnation Trial, we get verbatim transcripts of Joan describing her life and visions. But this was also a rigged court, set up by her enemies. And she was arguing for her life. Therefore, it's possible she may have changed details or added to her visions in hopes of convincing the judges that these messages were in line with Catholic thinking. By contrast, the Nullification Trial, which happened 25 years after her death, mind you, was rigged by her allies to vindicate her. And they did that by collecting testimony from anyone who'd ever met or known Joan. But of course, that was after she'd become a martyred hero, which in all honesty, probably colored people's memories. So can we believe these accounts of her early life and visions? Well, maybe. For the sake of this story, we're going to trust them. But it's always good to remember that some bias may be at work. But okay, back to Orleans. Why was it so important? Well, for starters, it was strategically vital, providing access to the Loire River. If it fell, the English could finally roll up the Dauphins' territory in southern France. But it was also psychologically important, because this awful stalemate had come to symbolize this whole phase of the war. You see, when King Charles VI and Queen Isabeau agreed to disinherit the Dauphins and make King Henry of England heir to the French throne, that was game. All Henry had to do was live longer than King Charles, and he would be the legitimate King of France. And that was supposed to be easy mode, since Charles was mentally ill, in poor health, and 18 years his elder. But then, Henry dropped dead at 35.
Uh-oh.
Charles died 2 months later, leaving the French crown in the hands of Henry's 9-month-old son. So in the north, you had a claimant to the throne, supported by a treaty, who was too young to be crowned for 15 years. And in the south, you had a claimant that had the right bloodline, but who was disinherited and couldn't get to the city where all French kings must be crowned. When both kings were alive, people knew what they were fighting for. Now, the conflict had become a rudderless stalemate, with both sides lacking inspiring leadership or the comfort of a righteous cause. Joan's mission was to guide the Armagnacs into a holy war. After receiving her task, Joan slipped out of her village, made her way to a nearby town, and demanded to see the garrison commander. She was on a mission from God, she said. He must provide her with an escort and deliver her to the Dauphins. The commander was not too pleased with this delusional girl, and told her to go back home. But Joan came back, twice, and each time with more followers from the town and surrounding countryside. Eventually, he gave in, and some of his soldiers would accompany Joan to the Dauphins' court. But the road they would take wound through Burgundian territory, a dangerous proposition for a soldier, and even more perilous for a teenaged girl traveling alone with rough men. So Joan's supporters, the peasants and families of the town, decided she should ride in disguise. Joan cut her hair short, and the townspeople gifted her a horse, a sword, and a suit of men's campaigning clothes, the kind that tied together so they were hard to remove by force. And after her long journey, her entrance into court caused a sensation. This young girl had traveled nearly 200 miles through enemy territory to bring the Dauphins a divine message. She'd even dressed like a man to guard her chastity. And that, well, that presented a bit of a theological problem. You see, Joan was not the first holy woman who wanted to share religious visions with the Dauphins. He already had one visit him a decade before, and another who'd taken up residence in a cemetery to preach her visions. But they were a little more orthodox. Joan's message was a political one, and the manner of her dress violated Old Testament rules against women wearing men's clothing. But the issue was, Charles and his court absolutely believed that God sent angels and saints to speak to people. And if Joan's visions were indeed divine, turning her away might bring the wrath of God the Father on his already precarious court. Plus, her message that Charles was indeed the true king was a needed morale boost, and she was a celebrity with a following. People were writing books about her. On the other hand, they also believed that demons could masquerade as angels. And if Joan were a pawn of Satan, inviting her into his court would similarly damn Charles's efforts to regain his rightful throne. And on top of that, he was nervous about looking foolish. So he ordered an investigation. There would be a discernment of spirits, a series of tests to conclude whether Joan's mysterious voices came from heaven or hell. First, a physical examination. Joan called herself La Pucelle, the maid. And that didn't just mean young girl. That meant a virgin. This was a sticking point, because medieval theologians believed only virgin women could receive divine visions. But after retiring to a private area, a group of noble women and nuns said she checked out. With that established, Charles then sent her to a group of theologians in order to examine her visions and beliefs. Were they orthodox? Heretical? Did they have a hint of brimstone, perhaps? Was she a virtuous person? Joan came back with a clean bill of spiritual health. She was virtuous and sincere, the theologians said, but they couldn't be sure if her messages really came from a divine source. But not to worry, they'd also come up with an easy way to check. Send her to Orleans. That's right, fit this teenaged maid out in armor, send her with the reinforcements that were already headed to the city, and see what she could do. If she managed to break this intractable 6th-month siege, they would be pretty darn sure that God was with her. And if not, well, the most they'd lose would be a horse, a suit of armor, and some men who were going there anyway. They sent Joan into a crash course of medieval combat, training her to ride a warhorse and move in blade armor, teaching her basic tactics. Then, they presented her with a white banner, embroidered with Charles's fleur-de-lis symbol of the Trinity, and her chosen symbol, the names of Jesus and Mary. And scholars, for their part, worked overtime digging into obscure prophecies that might support Joan. There had been a long-standing tradition that a maid would emerge to save France, and they marshaled every scrap they could find to support that, including a prediction that supposedly came from Merlin. Wizards in history! Heck yeah! So backed by shaky prophecies and in a suit of unfamiliar armor, the 17-year-old Joan rode off to war. Special thanks to educational tier patrons Ahmed Ziad Turk and Joseph Blame.
That's new. Never had a special thanks to their videos. Since I've watched them. Anyways, if you enjoyed that video, like and subscribe, share it to your friends. I'll see you in the next video. Also give an extra like if you want to continue seeing Peanut on the show. Anyways, this is Ironclad Steves saying goodbye.